According to Christian Council President Bishop Delton Fernander, who says simple surveys can sometimes be misconstrued.
And we do not trust any kind of polling of the country that is not done as it was a referendum, because any polling can be manipulated and can be made to say anything. And so if it is that you want to know what the people feel about it, let's take it to a referendum.
The nationwide scientific poll was suggested by the Bahamas National Commission on Marijuana.
Of relationships where it's not, first of all, biblically accepted, and then as far as a social norm, it's not accepted in the Bahamas.
Pope Francis has been quoted as saying, "What we have to create is a civil union law. That way they are legally covered." Burrows admitted that he was shocked by the comments and stated that he is awaiting further clarification on the Pope's remarks. However, he doubled down that he sees no need for special rights for same-sex couples.
We can't build a modular building in a few weeks' time to house about 150, as Dr. Sands suggested, to 200-bed facility. Call on the line. Good afternoon. Hello?
Who are you, sir?
Yes?
Yes, I said, good afternoon, Mr. Bodie.
I said yes, and I said, well, good afternoon, too.
Oh, right. And good afternoon to the Mr. Producer and your host, Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Johnson is not my host. He's my producer.
Okay, all right.
Get yourself, man. The COVID got your brains already?
Mr. Producer, Mr. Bodie and Mr. Producer. Mr. Bodie and Mr. Producer can.
His name is Johnson. His name is Mr. Johnson, yes.
Yeah, I said Mr. Johnson.
You didn't say it.
I want to ask both of you gentlemen a question. I want to ask both of you gentlemen a question.
Get to the point, Amos.
Yeah, getting to the point. Sure, a question. Can two wrong make a right?
Not as far as I'm aware.
Okay, so if the Bahamas government is responsible, okay,
for what?
For shutting down the Bahamian economy.
Yes, sir.
They cannot cherry pick which business they should support over the other. They have to be balanced.
Yes.
Okay? Now, I know for myself, these lockup, most of these lockdowns, lock up. And a lockdown is a lockup, because when you come out without provisions according to the Constitution, you are arrested. When you're given a ticket, like I was given a ticket for $500, okay, that's a lockup. You just have, because I haven't went to court yet and being set free yet is irrelevant. That's a lockup. See, the truth of the matter is the Bahamian people, fundamental rights, okay, and human rights, constitutional rights, the COVID-19 are bringing to light all of these atrocities, all of these tragedies, I call it. I would live in these type of tragedy in my life for a while under both parties. And I don't, no man in their right mind, no COVID don't have my mind doing anything. I praise the true and living God. And I ask God to spare my life and my children's life and my family life and my country, brothers and sisters.
And your wife and your sweetheart?
I'm not married. I'm no longer married.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm free.
So when did you go get a divorce? The courts are not open for divorce.
If you don't mind,
that's not my business, okay.
No, I'm not going to disrespect you like that on your own show. No. That was in 2012. Those days have passed. My family and I and the other family have moved on.
So that's 8 years now?
Yeah, and both of us doing well. So praise be to God, you understand?
Yes,
now,
sir.
At the end of the day, what I'm saying to you, the government cannot be allowed, because the public, the average common person who the Constitution protects, the law of the land protects, his rights, our rights, has been, is being, and will continue to be violated by the competent authority and his so-called cabinet. Unfortunately, they are constitutional people. These people, they're the law. They're the legislators. Yet that does not negate the fact that okay, abrogated their responsibility that they have to every common citizen, big and small. And in my humble submission with your lesson, I'll tell you in which way they have contravened each one of the, in my opinion now, in my humble opinion, all right?
Mm-hmm.
When they pretended, okay, to, like they forgot, all right, to go in the house, I can't remember exactly what it's called now, but to go in the house and do what is necessary for the first 6 months, or, okay, when they call the first lockdown, okay, and then it was only supposed to be for 14 days, and let's just say the time came where they pretended as if they forgot to do something constitutional, okay? Yet, after all of these months, they are still, what I would like to say, contravening, okay, everybody, constitutional rights, the courts. I mean, if you have no money, you go into jail. Okay?
You're not going to jail if you have no money. You could go to jail if you start teaching.
No. Let me say it like that, because now I like how you say it, because the truth of the matter, when someone, because you are a legislator, you are a cabinet minister, you are the prime minister at that, okay, and the competent authority at that.
What are you saying, Amos?
What I'm saying, for them to create, to violate the Bahamian people's rights, okay, according to Chapter 3, Article 29, and do not provide the provisions to keep people at home. People live by food and water, bro. All right? Food and water, that's what you live by. And if you lock me down,
and the word of God.
And, yeah, of course, God's word said, man will not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of his mouth. We live by that. That is what we grow up by. And so when you take away our rights to work, to create and to work to get our food, because God said, by the sweat of a man's brow, he shall eat his bread till the day he die and leave this earth. Okay? We supposed to work. So don't call me no socialist. Okay? Before you recognize the sovereignty of Almighty God and the truth of the Constitution, that all of us were born equal in rights and in dignity, and he has taken away our rights and taken away our dignity. And that is a serious problem. This is not China, Mr. Bodie. This is the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, only short 47 years after independence. That devil we must destroy and send a message to this devil. This is the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, bro, in 1973. The message that were preached at our first independence celebration.
Well, I'm still trying to figure out what you're saying.
What I'm saying?
Yes.
We are being betrayed.
By who?
Okay? By a competent authority and his cabinet. Okay? And by the way, the American businesses that are being attacked, tell the Bahamas cabinet and the competent authority, pay their water bill. A deal is a deal.
Well, that's a mess, eh? Adrian Gibson.
Let's talk sense now.
Adrian Gibson.
Yeah. That's Amos.
A person whom I supported a little bit. I didn't know he was an FNM, was going to run as an FNM. But he cussing the people them out.
You see?
For turning off the water. And
he's a disgrace. I
would not call Adrian Gibson a disgrace. He's a disappointment.
No, he's more than
how could Adrian Gibson and the government says they're cutting off people electricity? How could they say they're cutting off people electricity and cutting off people water? But when the company that supplies the water in Central Eleuthera says, look, you man, pay me what you owe me, or we cutting the water off.
And then you turn around and tell and giving the people listen to me. The company in Central Eleuthera, and they have a right long time to go for their money. Listen to me. The Bahamas government, the competent authority, the cabinet, they don't understand how much destruction, how much chaos, first of all, and destruction will be to the end because of their incompetent We don't need China and they COVID-19. We need a Donald Trump.
We need China. In fact, if minister...
No. Listen, I don't have nothing against the Chinese people. I'm talking about
if Menace were a smart man, as people say that he is...
Stay away from China.
Then all you got to do is...
Stay away from the Chinese Communist Party.
No. If China could build a 500 bed...
I don't care what they build. They can't build nothing better than God.
Would you let me say something? Please?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. Pardon me.
Thank you for your permission.
Man, come on.
The Chinese could build a 500-bed hospital in 2 weeks by modular buildings. Can't we send someone to China? Let's send Dion folks over to China. And can't we hustle 100-bed modular facility?
Why we have to send someone there? And this the one with causing our people die. Our people are already dead. They should already reach out to us. They need us more than we need them right now.
If you don't want to go to China, go to the United States and beg Donald Trump.
No, but see, listen.
If you don't let me say something, I cut you,
All right, go ahead.
All I'm saying is we can get a modular building from
I agree with you.
But if Dr. San say set up we got the old Phil Food Service building down there on Gladstone Road.
Yes.
Let's reconfigure that building into a facility.
But what,
Give to the foreign direct investor, give to the Bahamian. And so this has nothing to do with politics. It's all to do with policy, process, procedure, and how we look at ourselves in a country. And I refuse to get personally attacked because we came out here to provide information, motivation, and to get people to think about what they are going to do. So we never came out and attack anyone. And so I take that back in terms of what that caller said.
Reese?
Yeah, basically, my moving, it's been over a year now. I mean, he shouldn't be disheartened. I think young people should be encouraged by those things. And so I encourage him to learn more about the system in this country and how the impact of not having a real democratic House of Assembly. See, first of all, if you want progress within a political environment, there has to be democracy so that the opposition or even independents have a say in the way the country moves, shakes and moves. And so I encourage young people to understand that our system is not democratic. So if you have 34 people voting, 34 on the governing side, where is the progress in that? I mean, basically, all you're going to get them doing is agreeing to everything you're saying, which is, first of all, it's not progressive. Because in any progressive society, you have progressive governance that takes into consideration government and opposition. And so I think, with a little bit more knowledge, and I agree with Wayne, we're here to educate, we want to inspire, we want to motivate, we want to let people know that the country has resources, there's some value in who we are and what we do. There's opportunities for us to be economically and socially progressive, and let's just make the most of it.
I have a text that says, going against the grain doesn't work. The two examples are two former prime ministers. Let's go back to the phone lines. Caller, welcome to the show.
How you doing today, Michelle?
Great, how are you?
Awesome. Mr. Chipman and to Mr. Johnson. Michelle, with the greatest respect to all of the gentlemen, including myself, who normally call talk shows, especially those who are invited to talk shows. I don't care who you are or what office you hold. If you're not prepared to speak about the act, number 5 of 1971, I'm asking the young people not to take you all serious. Because guess what? You could come to this radio until you're ready to address that act. You're not ready to address Chapter 6, Article 71. And until those two things happen, hey, 70 years at least, minimum, of slavery. We'll stay in. Good day.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. But while we're not hearing that from them, there are a select few who are not ignoring the natural resources. They're ignoring it.
And I agree with you. But see, those voices, it count for naught unless you can really get the political directorate behind it. They enact the laws. They enforce policy. So until they get engaged and start to act in our best interest in that regard, we are not kicking the can up the road.
But we go back to the problem of the puppet masters.
Yeah. So I'm just articulating the view, and I'm saying that the politicians, present and future, need to take this serious. Need to engage the people that have done the research and figure out how to make this endure to the benefit of the Bahamians.
And how does that begin? How does that process begin? Michelle Malcolm's opinion: cut the strings from the puppet masters. That's how it begins. Until that happens, we beating up our face. We talking to hear ourselves. Until that happens, we talking to hear ourselves. They have to cut the strings from the puppet masters who are controlling. That is why they aren't talking about it. Paul, let's call a spade a spade.
And maybe you're right. And that's your take on it.
Hold on, Mr. Major.
By any means possible. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mr. Major. Let me just make another point, sir. My name is Wayne Johnson. Let me just make this point.
Hi, Wayne. Mm-hmm.
The point that Michelle is making. Back in 2002, I was a part of a group called Watch Bahamas. We did an oil seminar at the Hilton talking about the resources what we have in our country. And this is the thing that I said. I said, until we go and renegotiate these contracts that we have written with these companies internationally and allowing them to take stuff out of our country, we cancel the policies and renegotiate back with them to be able to get our fair share. We are just playing game, trying to look to the political directorate to change that. You understand?
I wholeheartedly agree. I agree.
My whole thing is, we talked about it earlier, and you've been in banking and you advise a lot of businesses. And I have my degree in international business, went to school in Chicago. Until we bring in antitrust legislation to protect the resources of what we have in this country, you will have what you have in the papers yesterday, 100 patents from these U.S. companies. Over 100 different products, 100 different patents being filed in the United States instead of being filed here in the Bahamas.
Yeah, just
I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. But remember now that antitrust, that really protects against monopolies. So again, if you get one local company that's going to monopolize it, it still doesn't help the whole population. But I take your point. I think you and I are on the same page.
But it also protects. See what it protects too. It protects these companies from coming in here and actually taking their finding and going and incorporating it in the United States. It protects against that. So you could go. There's a part of the arm that you could go after them and recoup whatever revenues they have made on that situation, but having the right protection with the law.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, Major. I just wanted to, Mr. Major, I just wanted to respond to Mr. Major. This is Reese Chipman, and I respect your consultation as well. And we will differ on the SPDC role and their impact, because you're right. The few dollars that they have been given, as well as any sort of contribution to their business, is a help. And to a great extent, Paul, I believe the help is just a carrot. I just think they're dangling the carrots in front of these small businesses. Because if they were serious about small business, they would they would ensure that antitrust laws are in place so that their businesses can grow and can develop because of the removal of monopolies. And the monopolies are, in some cases, very small items. I mean, people have to go to, even if I'm retailing, I have to go to a wholesaler for my products. Why is that? And I'm retailing even in the inner city, and I have to go buy products, which means it makes the cost even higher for the people in the inner city. I'm also, Centerville has not had a good experience with the small business program. Okay, and that's from our own surveys. We did not see, and it could be that, yes, there may not be sufficient security, or they may not have a successful history. But that is a part of developing a small business culture in the Bahamas, Paul, where we have to go a little further in terms of identifying situations where we're not only giving them a handout, but we want them to be able to be independent of the politics of government. and allow them to be independent in their thought through their own personal needs or issues. And so I'm a little, if the small business program is supposed to be successful, then put in antitrust laws, and then also that commercial enterprise law never came with regulations. They only passed an act. They didn't do the regulations or the rules, or even had guided policies. And that is what I requested when that act was passed. These rules and policies help us to go a little further into understanding what this government intends to do with regards to small businesses in this country. And we haven't seen it.
Okay, well, Reese, I don't want to take up too much time on the show, but let me just say that 45 million and growing that's been allocated toward this particular initiative. It can hardly be... Spent, Reese. That can hardly be described as a carrot. But I don't want to argue it any further other than to say that I've had at least 8 to 10 clients that have benefited from it directly, and all of their ratios and growth is going in the right direction. The second thing is, let me just finish. The second thing is that without them, they would have probably been out of business. So let me just move on. The next thing I'd like to comment on, Michelle, is the tax regime. I've heard a lot of discussion surrounding that on your show, and again, I agree wholeheartedly. I think the introduction of VAT was not a bad idea. It generated a great amount of additional revenue for the government. Whether they've deployed it correctly or properly or not is another matter. But I think it needs to be supplemented also with income tax. And again, I think a comprehensive review has to be undertaken of all the income avenues and streams that are not caught through business license and VAT and real property tax. And believe me, there are a lot. Capital gains and all this offshore activity going on in the country, all this other export of stuff that doesn't seem to even get tracked in our GDP. We need to look at all of those sources of income and find a way to tax them. I think the tourism industry taking a hit now is forcing us to turn over all these rocks and try to find real ways and legitimate ways that the government should be sharing this tax burden with more than just the underclass. I thank you. I'll listen.
All right. Thanks so much for calling, Paul. I want to read a text. It says, Michelle, to answer your question, enough will never be enough. For example, remember the richest MP in Parliament said those new government contracts were not for him but for his children's trust fund? So these guys are going to keep taking as much as they can for their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, etc. It never stops. Let's go back to the phone lines. Caller, welcome to the Paradigm Shift.
Hi, good morning, Michelle. Good morning, Reese and Wayne. How y'all doing?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, and good morning to the nation. I listened to that exchange with Mr. Major. That was Mr. Major, is not right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and Reese and Wayne. And, you know, it has to be highlighted that can the government, and it must be done as a matter of accountability. The government needs to account for the almost $50 million that has been spent so far with the SPDC so that we, the public, can make that determination that Mr. Major was leading us towards. We need to understand how many businesses receive the funds. We need to understand what kinds of industries. We need to understand if they've been successful to date. We need to understand how the policies that the government has implemented, the failed policies for COVID-19, has impacted those businesses. We need to understand that level of technical information in order to make any real determination on the success of the monies that is being spent. And secondly, when you look at spending $50 million in environment, it's like the government is putting the cart before the horse. It makes absolutely no sense if you're not going to put in the antitrust laws, which stop unfair competition between wholesalers and retailers. If you're not going to right size and ensure that electricity in the country is stable and it's provided at a reduced cost, if you're not going to ensure that opportunities where businesses can receive tax concessions and other levels of concessions that government offers to other major businesses coming into the country are available to these persons who you're going to spend tax dollars on, then you are setting up a business. In other words, you are setting up a business for failure. If you're not going to create the environment in which the business can succeed, it makes no sense putting $50 million into the economy. You are doing a disservice with the taxpayers' money, and you're doing a disservice to the businesses that you're setting up to fail in the short, medium, and long run.
Okay. Yeah.
I am, Michelle, I just want to quickly endorse every single thing that caller said. And also, $50 million, Michelle, and we haven't heard one thing from the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce, who really is the chamber of small businesses in the country. $50 million. And if you're setting up businesses in the way that they are without the other items the caller talked about, like antitrust laws, commercial enterprise bill restrictions, and tax concessions, then basically it's a big carrot. I don't care if the carrot is 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, 100 million. A carrot is a carrot, and you're dangling it.
All right, I'm going to read a text, and I'm going to go back to the phone lines. This one says, good morning. Don't expect the PLP or F&M to look at nationalizing our natural resources. They will never cut the strings, Michelle, because those strings fund their campaigns. And therefore, we will never get a campaign finance reform bill passed under none of them. Bahamians better wake up. Let's go back to the phone lines. Caller, welcome to the Paradigm Shift. Hello, caller, you there? All right, let's go to the next one. Caller, hello, welcome to the Paradigm Shift.
Hello.
Hi, you're on the air. We're listening. You're on the air. Go ahead and speak, please.
Oh, certainly. I'm calling in reference into the small business in the Bahamas and the funding of such businesses. I'm involved with one of the government agencies, right, that was put in place by the former administration. And I've been involved under two administrations. And one of the problems that I see with a number of small businesses in the Bahamas is not so much the accessing of funding to a great extent, but they're able to execute their vision, able to manage their business, and having the will to employ professionals in order to put them in a setting whereby they can structure their business in a corporate setting where they can reach the world market. And I've seen it also in the Family Islands. I have visited all of the major Family Islands, promoting the government and the former administration and the present administration, the availability of funds. And many of the entrepreneurs are just afraid to take the risk. They want the government to put up like 100% of financing, as opposed to even putting up a 5 or 10%. And even in some cases, when they do put up the 5 or 10%, they just renege on their commitment, and the business just falls apart. And it's a problem with the commitment as it relates to their business plan, and also their accountability to whoever they have got the funds from. As it relates to the SBDC, the Small Business Development Center, which I think is an excellent idea. It complements a lot of the other government agencies like the Bahamas Development Bank, the Bahamas Agricultural and Industrial Corporation, the Bahamas Venture Fund. So the Bahamas Venture Fund is really a fund designed for new ventures and also expanding existing businesses as well. And there are a number of businesses that have been very, very successful under the Venture Fund because they decided, right, to go our way in putting a proper structure in place, hiring professionals, right, in order to take their business to the next level. Until we see that in this country, a lot of these small businesses will continue to go under. They're too afraid to spend the money, put it in, have professionals guide them through a process in order to take it to the next level. And I believe that's where the SPDC has come in order to put businesses in a true perspective in order to get their business to the next level. Shall we see that? A lot of these small businesses will die.
All right, thank you for calling.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, Michelle, just a quick, just to respond to the caller. I think, of course, the SBDC is a good idea. What we're talking about is accountability. If the government doesn't even hold themselves accountable in the House of Parliament, we haven't seen one SBDC accountable, a report in the House table in the House. I haven't seen any financial report or that was tabled. And if they're not being accountable, how do you expect the small businesses to be accountable? And so what he is saying is that the small businessmen or women in the Bahamas want the government to take all of the risk. Well, you know, if the government wants to take all of the risk because they're dangling a carrot for political votes or political gain, then they ought to take all of the risk. But we also need to educate individuals. And, you know, when we create these bodies, for example, the Small Business Development Center and the any sort of structure that's put in place to help small businesses, probably get someone who has been in business and has been successful in the Bahamas over the past 15, 20 years. And when you talk to them, you will realize very quickly how challenging politics is, even in their business. These small businesses can't survive because of the level of politics that's involved in their business. So why would, if my business needs $10,000, why would you give me 5? You're setting me up to fail. And these are the policy matters that governments know about, and they could change, but they don't.
All right, let's go back to the phone lines. Caller, welcome to the Paradigm Shift.
Yes, good day. Michelle, how are you?
Great, how are you?
Man, listen, this is a wonderful show. Mr. Major gave some good analysis and all your panel. And this is what I was saying, and I was criticized about it yesterday, but all I was saying, basically, we gathered information, we go and we do our research to find out what's going on in our country. And, you know, and I was told basically, okay, I'm just copying information, right? False information, but these are the shows that you would want to call in and listen and learn. Those 4 callers yesterday, always calling on the talk show talking nonsense. This is the show they should be calling in. I was criticized by you too, but that's okay. I'm very mature about it.
Newly minted Minister of State Dwight Sawyer defended the competent authority, charging that he is not a dictator.
I heard a lot of talk about dictatorship by some persons in the other place yesterday. Nothing could be further from the truth. Today, we are engaged in precisely the kind of direct political oversight which is contemplated and mandated by our Constitution. The opposition are free to speak, to make their case, and to advance their own counter-proposals and suggestions. But I want to emphasize, the competent authority is not a one-man ruler.
Well, that resolution passed in Parliament yesterday with 14 votes, 24 MPs were absent. During his contribution to that debate, former Health Minister Dr. Dwayne Sands said the actions taken thus far to slow the spread of the virus isn't working, and again reiterated that the country is underperforming in the fight against COVID-19. Sands, who resigned as health minister back in May, called for a plan of attack, then offered his own suggestions for turning things around.
How many beds? I don't know, maybe 150 beds. We can ask Direct Relief, we can ask some of the other NGOs to assist us in building a modular facility that's robust, where we can have an intensive care unit, operating rooms, so that we can reduce the splitting of care. We now provide care at South Beach, at Doctors West, at Doctors East, at Princess Margaret Hospital. And what does that do? It means that the hospital is stretched. It means that the staff is stretched. It means that, Mr. Speaker, ordinary people coming in with heart attacks and strokes and diabetes and kidney failure cannot get care. We should publish the plan and educate the public, and do so as quickly as possible.
Additionally, he called for more testing and said more thought should be given to how lockdowns are executed.
If we are going to lock down, let us do it well. Let us do it right. This on-off halfway is not making sense. What it is doing, in my view, is harming businesses. It is forcing people to jam up in front of the food store, in front of the pharmacy, etc., because now they're desperate to go and get their goods and services. We should be testing, as I said, so that we get to a 5% or less positivity rate. We should support access to drugs like remdesivir. We should eliminate the ban on mask importation. It has served its purpose, and people sometimes want to get access to better quality masks.
Closing out debate, St. Anne's MP Brent Simnett acknowledged that COVID fatigue was setting in among Bahamians, but argued the extension was necessary given recent flare-ups and infection numbers in family islands like Grand Bahama.
Sure, there is fatigue, but a lot of this fatigue is being brought on by negativity as well. If we continue to be negative about the situation we are in, we are never going to get out. We have to get these numbers down. The other day in Grand Bahama, unfortunately, the numbers, I think, went to 15. You're seeing a uptick in the Grand Bahama numbers after a long period of having them down at 1 or 2. So we have to be able to move quickly to be able, if that is a problem, to deal with it. South Eleuthera and North Eleuthera here, their numbers were down low, and then all of a sudden there was an uptick. So something had to be done about it, and these emergency powers give you the right to do that. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, the emergency powers is a non-issue.
Simnett suggested enforcement of COVID-19 restrictions needed to be stepped up as a way of getting more Bahamians to take the outbreak seriously. Bahamas Faith Ministries Senior Pastor Dave Burrows lamenting that there is no need for special rights to be afforded to same-sex couples. His comments follow remarks made by Pope Francis last week, where he seemingly expressed support for same-sex civil unions.
My contention is that we cannot create a new category of relationships where it's not, first of all, biblically accepted, and then as far as a social norm, it's not accepted in the Bahamas.
Pope Francis has been quoted as saying, "What we have to create is a civil union law. That way they are legally covered." Burrows admitted that he was shocked by the comments and stated that he is awaiting further clarification on the Pope's remarks. However, he doubled down that he sees no need for special rights for same-sex couples. Well, in news from the crime beat, police in the capital seeking the public's assistance in identifying and locating 2 male suspects believed to be responsible for an armed robbery on Monday. Police tell us shortly after 3 p.m., 2 men, one of whom was armed with a handgun, entered a business establishment on Market Street and demanded cash from a female manager. One of the suspects then took an undetermined amount of cash from the register. Police can't say in which direction the suspect escaped. Police are also investigating a shooting incident yesterday, which resulted in 1 man nursing injuries in hospital. Preliminary reports indicate that shortly after 10 p.m., a male was walking across the street on Windsor Lane from his neighbor's residence when he noticed a male approaching him from behind. The male, who was in possession of a firearm, discharged it several times in his direction, injuring him. The victim was transported to hospital via a private vehicle where he is listed in serious but stable conditions. Investigations into both matters are ongoing. COVID-19 has taken 4 more lives in the country, all on New Providence once again. Health officials confirmed the 87-year-old male died Saturday, a 63-year-old man died Sunday, and 2 men ages 76 and 75 died yesterday. Total death numbers now stand at 136, with 16 deaths under investigation. The number of persons being treated in the intensive care unit more than doubled in a day to 19. The majority of those, 9 cases, are in Grand Bahama. Overall, newly confirmed cases of the virus declined, with 36 being recorded yesterday. The majority, 27, are in New Providence, with 7 cases in Eleuthera and 2 in Grand Bahama. But overall, testing is also down, with only 119 tests completed yesterday compared to 297 the day before. There have now been 6,502 cases of COVID-19 recorded in country since the start of this pandemic. 2,236 cases remain active. Well, that's a look at stories making news at this hour. For the Guardian News Network, I'm Berthany McDermott.
This is Guardian Radio, your station for up-to-the-minute news, intelligent, interactive, and engaging conversation. 96.9 FM.
With the outbreak of COVID-19.
As long as I can understand this process,
we are saying that the vaccines are not mandatory, which means that if you're like me, I'm a vaccine person. I have no problem with the vaccine, but I won't be the first. I won't be the guinea pigs. I won't let my children be the guinea pigs. Buddy, I'll let America vaccine themselves to pieces before I try and use that vaccine on my children. So what does that mean? That I know that if I make that decision, that is a personal responsibility. But what does that mean for the country? Does that mean then that we continue in perpetuity with these lockdowns? This makes no sense if we are not saying that this is data-driven. Now we are looking at the 1st of November for reopening. What is the plan there for this reopening? We are getting 3 million antigen tests. Who were these 3 million tests going to be for? Guests and us? How often will we be tested? Will there be free testing? But no, it doesn't sound like there'll be any free testing for us, so we're going to be forced to lock down. This is the unfairness of it. This is where the questions continue to show up over and over and over again. So let's not beat the dead horse. We've come to the conclusion that the administration doesn't necessarily know what they're doing. We've come to the conclusion that we ourselves are going to have to either have an uprising, we're either going to have to just acquiesce and just let it ride, or we make our decision now firm and continue to be observant as other deals are being done during the COVID era. The COVID era isn't just about COVID. The COVID era can be about a lot of things. When we come down, if anyone remembers, at the end of the Ingram administration, one of the big scandals was that we were selling land at like $10 an acre, like this massive amount of land, like the day before the former prime minister was to leave, at this crazy number that we were doing away with land. Anybody remember with the last administration, there were allegations of running around with one entity trying to get rid of information. That was the allegation there. We've heard these allegations before. Coming to the end of your tenure, people tend to hoard, yeah? So we got to watch and make sure that we are awake and we are very focused to see what is going on, because this is affecting us. Our children are at the helm of these changes, these challenges, this poor fiscal management. This administration will leave us in worse debt than the prior one, and the prior one left us with worse debt than the ones before. So we're not getting smarter with governance. We're not getting more astute. We're not streamlining. We're not doing better. We're actually worse. And it is showing that the same two-party system, the recycling of the...
Any kind of polling of the country that is not done as it was a referendum, because any polling can be manipulated and can be made to say anything. And so if it is that you want to know what the people feel about it, let's take it to a referendum.
The nationwide scientific poll was suggested by the Bahamas National Commission on Marijuana.
Tuesday, October 27th, 2020, the Constitution of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Chapter 3, Protection of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms of the Individual. Chapter 3, Article 15, states, whereas every person in the Bahamas is entitled to the fundamental rights and freedoms of the individual, that is to say, has the right, whatever his race, place of origin, political opinions, color, creed, or sex, but subject to the respect for the rights and freedoms of others and for the public interest to each and all of the following, namely, A, life, liberty, security of person, and the protection of the law. B, freedom of conscience, of expression, and of assembly and association. And C, protection for the privacy of his home and other property, and from deprivation of property without compensation. The subsequent provisions of this chapter shall have effect for the purpose of affording protection to the aforesaid rights and freedoms, subject to such limitations of that protection as are contained in those provisions, being limitations designed to ensure that the enjoyment of the said rights and freedoms by any individual does not prejudice the rights and freedoms of others or the public interest.
'The Nationwide Scientific Poll was suggested by the Bahamas National Commission on Marijuana. Tuesday, October 27, 2020, the Constitution of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Chapter 3, Protection of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms of the Individual. Chapter 3, Article 15, states, whereas every person in the Bahamas is entitled to the fundamental rights and freedoms of the individual, that is to say, has the right, whatever his race, place of origin, political opinions, color, creed, or sex, but subject to the respect for the rights and freedoms of others
Chapter 3 of the Bahamas Constitution as it relates to protection of rights and freedoms. Chapter 3, Article 29, 2 states, nothing contained in or done under that authority of any law shall be held to be inconsistent with or in contravention of Article 29, any provision of Article 20, other than paragraph 4. Therefore, any provision of Article 21 to 26 inclusive of this Constitution, to the extent that the law in question makes in relation to any period to which this article applies, provision, or authorizes the doing during any such period of anything which is reasonably justifiable in the circumstances of any situation or existing during that period for the purpose of dealing with that situation. (29.1) states, this article applies to any period when A, the Bahamas is at war, or B, there is in force a proclamation, in this section referred to as a proclamation of emergency, made by the Governor General and published in the Gazette, declaring that a state of public emergency exists for the purposes of this section. So I read again. In light of the Constitution, the Bahamas Constitution, Chapter 3, Article 29.1, that I have just read, in light of 29.1 and the powers that a proclamation of emergency really referred to, or really is, Chapter 29.2 says, nothing contained in or done under that authority of any law shall be held to be inconsistent with or in contravention of Article 19, any provision of Article 20 other than paragraph 4. Therefore, or any provision of Article 21 to 26 inclusive of this Constitution, to the extent that the law in question makes in relation to any period. In other words, there's a proclamation of an emergency for a certain period. Article 29.2 is saying certain articles of our Constitution is suspended as relates to Article 19, any provision of Article 20 other than paragraph 4. Then it goes on to say, or, therefore, if you suspend those previous ones, therefore, any provision of 21 to 26 inclusive of this Constitution, to the extent that the law in question makes the law in question makes in relation to any period, any time limit you're putting on a curfew, because you're locking us down. A proclamation is one thing, but when from your proclamation you're locking people down without abiding by the constitutional rights that the people have in a time of a proclamation, then you are in contravention of Chapter 3, Article 29.2, as relates to authorizing, or should I say, inclusive of this Constitution to the extent that the law in question makes in relation to any period to which this article applies, meaning Article 29, 1, 2, or 3. Okay? Relation to any period to which this article applies, provision, or authorizes the doing during this any such period in this case, or anything in this context, in the context of this so-called war that we're fighting relative to the COVID-19, okay, and or B, the proclamation of an emergency that has been evoked by our sitting Prime Minister. And so, when then the provision article applies, it says here, to any period to which this article applies or authorizes the doing during any such period of anything which is reasonably justifiable in the circumstances of any situation or existing during that period for the purpose of dealing with that situation. Okay? And so the Prime Minister has a right to do what, as a competent authority, as the Prime Minister, and first getting the yes from his cabinet collectively. I guess once there's a quorum, you can get an extension in this latest extension with 24 members of parliament being absent, more than 200% of the parliament being absent in comparison of the 14 that were present. And when 14 men and or women can make decisions that affect 400,000, give and take, the population of the Bahamas, the Bahamian people must know, no matter if you're 18 years of age and above, you must know that we are in a state of invasion. And we're being invaded like they say, by this so-called COVID-19, this enemy that came to kill us. And so we in a war. Now, President Donald Trump said, he's on record, okay, that the cure for COVID-19, okay, or how should I put it now? I almost forget how he said it, but basically he's saying trying to protect the world population from COVID-19 cannot be more harmful than the cure for COVID-19. And in my humble view and opinion, I agree with him. While many lives are being lost, and we all sympathize with those who have moved on because of this COVID-19, the facts does not change. It's a China disease, okay? China inflicted the world and will continue to inflict the world with this disease because they're not getting their economic and communist way. Okay? Now, the Bahamas is my home. And because of my political and religious views on this matter, my fundamental rights will continue to be taken hostage, along with myself, by this so-called proclamation of an emergency. Chapter 3, Article 30 says, Chapter 3, Article 3130, subsection 1A says, is a law in this article referred to as an existing law that was enacted or made before the 10th of July 1973 and has continued. The key here is and has continued to be part of our law, part of our B, they says, repeals and reenacts and existing law without alteration. Okay? And C says, C says alters an existing law and does not thereby render that law inconsistent with any provision of the said Article 16 to 27 inclusive in a manner in which or to the extent to which it was not previously so inconsistent. And so to give Bahamian people a charge for breaking curfew, that to break curfew in the Bahamas, okay, we have in the Bahamas freedom of movement. And if you violate as the government by taking away my freedom of movement because of your proclamation of emergency, the Constitution says the one who made that proclamation must see to it that provision in relations to his proclamation is made to the public, in the public interest. So in other words, the Prime Minister cannot legislate the law. He cannot lock people down without food and water, okay? Trying to prevent COVID, the prevention of COVID, cannot cause the life or health of Bahamians at the expense of the competent authority and his cabinet sole decision, okay? That is a national decision, okay? And they are not giving the Bahamian people any reason, any decent reason why they're continuing, while they are wasting time, okay? Bahamian people such as home renters, okay, or those who have mortgages, those who paying rent, those who paying for shelter, room and board in the country, still are unemployed because of the competent authority and his cabinet and the Free National Movement, communist dictator style, okay, Marxist, socialist, dictators, gangsters decision. It is unconstitutional because every Bahamian in the country was born equal in rights and in dignity. Okay? And me leaving my home on a Sunday was not a crime. Okay? The Bahamas cabinet, okay, made that a crime without the law and the Constitution being repealed or reenacted. or altered in any such way to reflect that my rights can be taken away. I can be ordered to stay home, stay in my yard, stay in my house without food and water for more than 72 hours, on top of waiting 17 days prior. That is inhumane, okay? And chapter 15 says, okay, pardon, the preamble of our Constitution speaks to no human being being treated in an inhumane way. As slaves, slavery in our country is abolished, okay? And that is my point of view on the matter. And so to give the Bahamian people $500 ticket for seeking provisions for them to bring home, for them to have in their home, which is just a little bit of food and a little bit of something to drink, okay? And you have the police arresting them and locking them up is a violation of our human rights, our civil rights, our constitutional rights. It is a dangerous precedence for us as a country to allow our government to continue, and they must and should be condemned. Thank you. Thank you, Bahamas. Let's wake up. Chapter 3 of the Bahamas Constitution as it relates to protection of rights and freedoms. Chapter 3, Article 29, 2 states, nothing contained in or done under that authority